time on your busy schedules. This is a retreat to follow as a follow-up to some concerns raised by citizens. We talked about it briefly, I believe, in the July HDC meeting. We followed up again in the August HDC meeting. And thank you for giving us the time to do all of the research. And we couldn't have done it without our former city attorney, Andrea Leslie Fite, and her team. And I believe she'll be joining us shortly. And when she does, we'll just let her hop on and say hello. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. The focus of the retreat is to look at the applicant data made to the full commission between April 13th, 2017 and August 28th, 2020. And the dates selected were because April 12th, 2017 was when the design guideline update was done. And then August 28th, we just had to cut it off so that we could do the data evaluation, and August 28th is a Friday. I am, for those of you who don't know, I think everyone on here knows everybody, but I'm the Historic District Commission Program Manager, Christy Harpst, and here in the meeting room with me are Kim Parati, our chairperson, PJ Henningsen, our vice chair, and Jim Hayden, our former chair. And most of the rest of the commissioners are with us on the call. And we'll just, when we get to the point where everyone's kind of talking, we'll make sure that the first time you talk, if you would just identify yourself and so we know who's talking. I'm just going to move right into it. So we're going to cover the North Carolina State Statute. For anyone who's on the call who's not familiar with our appointed commissioners, just wanted to set it up so everyone knows who the appointed commissioners are, and then follow with a project overview, research findings, and then a discussion and some next steps. So I wanted to start with the state statute because it's really critical to setting up some of our discussion. And General Statute 160A 400.7 talks specifically about the members of the Historic Preservation Commission. And the general state statute is where we get our powers at the city of Charlotte to even have a Historic District Commission. And from the state, we are empowered to create a preservation commission, but within specific parameters. And those parameters are that a majority of the members of the commission shall have a demonstrated special interest, experience, or education in history, architecture, archaeology, or related fields. And so,
may I interrupt you for 1 second?
Absolutely.
We do not see your PowerPoint if you're using one.
You do not? Okay, well, let me fix that. Thank you so much. I thought I hit share, but I could have maybe not. Still having technology issues in this room. Let's see. There we go. Do you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, y'all. Here's the state statute so everyone can read it. We have a link down at the bottom. If there's anyone on the call that wants to read the whole thing, I am glad to send that out. We will update the presentation that's on the website. We did post the data yesterday, but in order to frame the conversation, I added a couple more slides just to give an overview, and one of them is the state statute slide. So this is one that slightly differs from what you've seen online. And again, we get all of our powers from the state. The next slide shows, maybe. The next slide shows all of the commissioners, and they're listed in alphabetical order. That's the only reason they're listed in such an order, with, of course, the chair, vice chair, and second vice chair at the top. And they're listed showing who the appointing authority is. Half, not quite half, are the mayor and then city council, And how the Historic District Commission is set up in Charlotte is that if your neighborhood is a district, you get representation on the commission. So there's a Wesley Heights, Dilworth, Plaza Midwood, Hermitage Court, Fourth Ward. All of our districts are represented. Dilworth has an additional seat called the Dilworth Business Operator seat. And then we have at-large members from the community and also a planning commission representative. And if you look at this chart, I didn't put it on here, but the professions of the commissioners run the gamut of IT, real estate, landscape architecture, interiors, interior architecture, commercial architecture, residential architecture, contractors, interested people who are community activists and know about zoning and preservation. And so our commission does meet all the requirements for as outlined by the state statute. Okay. Now, as far as the project overview goes, the time frame, again, to establish a standard baseline, we just looked at the guidelines of any of the projects issued under the new guidelines. And we cut it off at August 28th simply because we needed to have just a cutoff point so we could start our data inquiry and instead of keeping to add things. So we cut it off at August 28th, but so there are only partial year data from 2017 and from 2020. We reviewed the applications. We just looked at the applications for the full commission. So how our commission is set up, like everyone else, there are minor works and major works. Minor works are things that staff can review. Staff is given very specific and limited parameters for the projects they can review. And the full commission, anything going to the full commission requires a vote, the full public hearing, the notice requirements. So we did limit our review to just the full commission review. And I will say that 2/3 of the applications in any given year are staff reviewed applications. So we're talking about 1/3 of the applications received each year is what were reviewed. We also further looked into, of those full commission review cases, of those 1/3 that we get every year that go to the full commission, we combed through that data to look for applications associated with credentialed professionals. So architects, contractors, real estate agents, landscape architects who are either actively serving or had previously served as a commissioner. I will say that I did go one step further, and even if an application was not associated with a credentialed professional, such as, which we'll talk about a little later, but it was put forth by the commission, I included it. So I wanted to be as transparent as possible and just include all applications submitted to the full commission by either sitting or former commissioners. And then we boiled down a little further, and after looking at the full commission applications by year, we also looked at the review timeframes and the decision outcomes. And there is a lot of data in here, but the next slide shows our overview of findings. And this is the summary slide that just full commission projects between April 13th and August 28th, there are 390 applications for full commission projects. Again, that only represents about 1/3 of the applications that the Historic District Commission received during that time period. Of those 390, 40 applications were submitted by former or sitting commissioners, so about a little over 10%. And of that 390, if you're just looking at sitting commissioners, not former commissioners, there were only 14 applications submitted. So not quite 4%, 3.6%. Again, these totals, the 14 number includes an application that was withdrawn and never heard by the full commission. It also includes an application by a commissioner who submitted in her personal capacity for her own home. So if you would take out those two cases, that would be 12 out of the 390 were actually submitted by credentialed professionals and heard by the full commission. This gives you that information, but broken down by year. We broke it out by total applications that went to the full commission, total applications by former and sitting commissioners, and then application by sitting commissioners only, and broke it out both in terms of numbers and percentages. And again, a reminder that 2017 and 2020 is partial year data. And the rest of the information boils down more specifically into each year. So there's a chart for every year that shows the application number, the project address, what the project type is, because that can often impact the review time frame. Smaller projects usually only take a meeting. Larger projects take usually a couple meetings. Who the applicant was, what their applicant status is as a former sitting commissioner, the review time frame, and then the decision. And after each of the charts, I included information from our annual reports, and to just show that, so there were 112 full commission reviews in 2017, and 2017 isn't a great example. We'll skip 2017 and go to 2018 because 2017 is a partial year, but it also shows the breakdown of application decisions and showing that most of our applications are approved or approved with conditions. There are some that are denied. It shows the 365-day delay, withdrawn, and then pending at the time that we compiled the annual report. Again, 2018 data, still the same. This is where I referenced the professional and personal capacity. You'll look at line 15. There was an alternate materials request by Tamara Titus. She was a sitting commissioner at the time. She is not a credentialed professional. She is a preservationist, but she's not an architect or a contractor by trade. She's a writer. And so it was really important for us to note that she was not submitting in her professional capacity, but in her personal capacity for her own home. And then the 2018 again included application decisions. You can see that there are 21 denials total. And as we went through our annual reports, I believe this was the year that we started digging deep into the denied projects, because there was also a misconception that everything got denied by the commission. And so we wanted to take a closer look at those to make sure that, is that true, or how can we help these denied projects? And what we found is that for denied projects, the reasons for denial, half of them were not resubmitted. Well, 2/3 of them were not resubmitted. 8 of them were resubmitted and approved. We also looked at the reasons for denial: inappropriate materials, removal of historic materials, and visibility. A lot of those things are things that they just flew in the face of black and white prohibitions of the guidelines. And that is also continued with 2019, which we'll get to in just a second. With the 2019 chart, I also have a note at the bottom about current sitting commissioner, Commissioner Barth. He submitted an application in early 2019. He was not a sitting commissioner at the time, nor had he applied to be on the commission at that time. And he did not have any other submissions during this evaluation timeframe. So for that reason, his application was not included in these totals. And again, our chart with, you can see, highly approved with conditions is the trend with the commission. And then again, we looked at denied applications, and this one dug in a little deeper. We looked at projects that weren't resubmitted and still not approved, or resubmitted and approved. And again, the reasons for denial were things that just did not meet the guidelines. And we don't have, and for 2020, again, partial data from January 1st through August 28th. We, as everyone knows, we didn't have a couple of meetings in May. We're a little behind schedule for hearing the cases. And this is probably not accurately reflective of what our 2020 totals will end up being, but it's where we're at right now. And we have had no applications by current commissioners in 2020 as of yet. We also do not have our annual report done. We do annual reports based on calendar year, so January 1 to December 31st. So we start pulling that information together towards the end of December, beginning of January. So that is not available. I would like to turn this over now to Kim, our chair, and if you would just like to start and then move through a moderated discussion. Given our need to be virtual, it makes it hard to have really good back and forth discussion. So we're going to try and make sure that everyone gets a chance to talk, but we will have to kind of do it one at a time. Commissioners, I think what Kim's going to do is we're going to open it to the public first. So if anyone has thoughts or questions, just make a note, whether you're a member of the public or the commission, and we will. Cindy is here helping us. Please use your raise your hand tool if you'd like to speak. We will be monitoring that and looking into that. Oh, before I turn it over to you, I would like to recognize Andrea. Andrea's just shown up. Andrea.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming and saying hi and for all your help with the project.
It was my complete pleasure, and I'm sorry I was running a little bit behind. I had another meeting I had to wrap up, but it is so good to see you all virtually. And again, just thank you for the opportunity to have served you while I did.
Thank you so much. Kim?
So just to echo your sentiment, thank you to our former attorney, Andrea Leslie Fight, and her team for really digging in and mining the data for this. And thank you to our HDC staff for organizing it and putting it together so that we could answer some of the questions that one of our concerned citizens raised. And thank you to Ms. McGuire for raising these concerns so that we could have this opportunity to really show our process and how it plays out. I also want to thank our commissioners. We, and I've said it before, take a lot of our personal time and dedicate it to this particular commission, not only in educating ourselves, but in reviewing the applications for hours on end, showing up prepared so that we can do a good job for the people who are counting on us, our neighbors. So thank you to our entire team, and thank you to those of you who have tuned in today. I want to reiterate the general state statute that Christy brought up, which charges us to have experts on our commission. It's true that the more you work on something, the more steeped in something you are, the better you're probably equipped to handle that. And so again, I just want to recognize that many of our professionals use these guidelines in their day-to-day activities and working with clients. They not only use these guidelines, but they continue to educate themselves on our mission here, which is preservation, while at the same time allowing for progress within our neighborhoods too. So they continue to educate themselves through classes and online training. They come to meetings prepared and ready to hear the case, and they step up and assume positions of leadership here on the HDC. So all of that hopefully shows not only our community, but the state at large, how committed we are to serving and to doing right by not only our communities, but our cities, our city. So having said that, we are going to, as Christy said, conduct this much like we would a meeting where we will hear from the public and then we will hear from the commissioners. Cindy Kohanek is here. She'll be alerting me as to who wants to speak. So please use the raise your hand button when you think of something you want to say. It might be a minute before we get to you, so please be sure to write down your thoughts. We want to make sure that we have an inclusive discussion and one where everyone has a chance to be heard. Having said that, we also are limited in time. It's 11:31 now. Our session ends at 1, and this can be discussions, you know, can bring out a lot of passionate ideas and thoughts that people want to express. I would ask that you limit those to the procedure, to the numbers that Christy has presented, and to our specific guidelines. We all know what it's like to be pulled to the side when we're walking our dog down the street or we're hanging out in our community and we have someone who wants to talk about a particular project that's come through our board meetings. Some people like it, some people don't. It's a lot of subjectivity out there, but what we want to do is really hone in for the sake of time and efficiency on what Christy has presented on our guidelines and our process. Okay, fair? So let's get started with any public comments. Do we have anyone from the public who wants to speak?
I believe, Melissa, we'd love to start with you. Would you like to speak? And we can't see you, but we can hear you. So
Sure.
feel free to turn on your video. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you might have some, oh, hi, there you are. Hi.
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 And you have someone with you. So maybe
Yes.
you would just.
David Kern. My husband, David Kern.
Perfect. David and Melissa, the floor is yours.
Wow. I'm interested and impressed with how much research you did and really appreciate it. And I think it's really interesting. But I'd like to start by saying my concern has to do with process and appearance as much as anything else. And as I've said several times, I think it's so important that people in the community feel comfortable with the committee. You make hard decisions. I know most of your projects are approved, but even your projects that are approved are going to make some people unhappy. So it's a fairly emotional process that you're involved in. And I think it is so critical that there is no perception of an improper process. And to me, we'll just turn that off. Obviously, I'm not. My husband's very good with technology. I'm less so, but I'm not concerned with former commissioners. I don't have a problem with that at all. The issue that I have raised is, it seems to me that when you have someone sitting on the Historic Commission who is also profiting by projects that are brought before the commission, it by nature raises questions about impartiality, undue influence, etc. I know people recuse themselves. I also know this is a small board, and it's hard to have an effective recusal on a small board when other people may also bring projects that, I bring a project, David's on the commission, he may bring a project tomorrow. You have to wonder if projects get as much scrutiny if they're brought by a commissioner. But even aside from that, I think the real issue to me is the perception issue. And I'm not sure, I'm not really sure where your data comes out. It appears that quite a few projects are brought by sitting commissioners. If that's not the case, I don't know, if 3% brought by sitting commissioners, how that compares with how many, is that more than other groups, other architects have brought in front of this? Are we seeing more projects from sitting commissioners than other people in the community? So I don't understand that data. But if it's small, if the number is small, if there's so many fewer projects, then it seems to me there should be no issue saying, okay, for the brief period of time that you sit on this commission, you can't bring a project. Once you get off, you will have expertise, go market it, go sell it, but at least you're not sitting on the commission. And that's my issue. I guess I'm going to turn to David and see if he.
No, I totally agree. The key is perception, the perception in the community. And your data, if anything, shows that you could change the policy, like Melissa put in her original letter to all of you. You could change the policy easily without doing much damage to the commissioners, if indeed there are very few projects brought by commissioners. Then that solves the perception issue without doing damage to any individual volunteering their time for the sake of the city.
And I just want to add one last thing, and that is that I think your reputation is questioned by a number of people in the community. I've told a number of you before, we've had a lot of people talk to us about this, not always when we seek them out, by the way, and there seems to be a lot of suspicion about the process by which the HDC makes its decisions. I think this would be something that would go a long way to make your perception better.
And strengthen what the commission does, yeah.
So that's it for us. I'm going to mute myself.
Question that you had, and it's that you weren't really clear about the data. So to make it very clear, applications heard by the full commission, there were 390, and those applications are from property owners, other architects, landscape architects, contractors. Of those 390, it can be anybody who is associated with the project. We require, as part of our process, a signature page from the homeowner. So the homeowner is the ultimate applicant, but a lot of times the homeowners turn over the process to to a professional, whether it's an architect, a real estate agent, or a landscape architect, a contractor. And so of those 390 cases, everything else is submitted by someone who is not a commissioner. The only ones submitted by commissioners were, like I said, 14 cases. And if you take away the case that wasn't even heard by the commission and the case submitted by Tamara Titus, who was submitting for her own house, that's 12 cases out of the 390 were submitted by architects, landscape architects, contractors who were sitting on the commission at the time. And that's what the tables will show you, if it's sitting or former. So everything else is submitted by, again, property owners, different architects in town, different contractors. And so it is really looking 12 to 14 cases out of everything the commission hears. But I know we have talked about this before, and this has been talked about before when Andrea was serving as our staff. And it has been also talked about at other retreats by the commissioners who are actively serving. And I would like to, turn this back to Kim and maybe let's recognize any other residents who want to talk, and then allow the commissioners to, share their experiences.
Melissa, and I'm sorry I didn't get your husband's name, but Melissa and David, thank you so much for speaking up and sharing your point of view. Do we have any other members of the public who'd like to speak up and share their point of view? Okay, all right. So, John Ferris, Mr. Ferris, please.
Yes. Hey, John Ferris, thank you for having me today. First of all, it's Melissa, correct? Hello, can you hear me?
You have the floor. Everyone else is on mute.
Okay, got it. I got you. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say that, Melissa, I applaud you for getting involved. I've been involved with the HDC for over 15 years now, and in different capacities, 10 years as a commissioner and 5 as a community activist, if you will, who organized a group called Preserve Historic Dilworth because we felt like the commission wasn't doing their due diligence during a certain time period. And I think we were rather successful at bringing some things to light and actually getting on board some other groups that eventually led to the guidelines being overhauled and made improvements to the process that we have today, which is working very, very well, I think. So first of all, I want to commend you for getting involved, speaking up. I, for one, am someone who is always open to making things better, more transparent, more inclusive, more successful in what this mission actually is. And I do not disagree with you that there may be this perception out there of impropriety, or I think there's going to always be talk about any sort of governing body that's telling people what to do. But I want, and I don't disagree that in this particular instance, you were told that I, as a commissioner, would have certain abilities that someone else who is not a commissioner or not an architect involved with the HDC might not have. In fact, I have an email here that is dated November 4th, 2019, that states clearly to this particular applicant that I have no control over HDC policy with regard to trees, pervious, impervious area calculations, or schedule. I just have to go by their rules like everyone else. For me, as an architect, a professional architect licensed by the state of North Carolina, to participate in some sort of impropriety would be a very serious and egregious act on my part, something that I could possibly lose my license for. So I take this very serious. I will state that no one that is working hand in hand, the staff, the commissioners, the people who attend meetings regularly, this is a thing of passion. Everyone here, in my experience, is trying to do the best job they can possibly do. I don't disagree that there's a perception out there, but that is a misconception. And I would say to those folks who have that idea, get more involved with the process. Show up to the meetings. See what actually happens. And I myself, talking about qualifications and in reference to what Andrea said at the first of the meeting, I've been an architect in Charlotte for 31 years. I've been a resident of Dilworth for 20 years. I've been involved with the commission, as I stated, for 15 years. Over those 10 years, I attended probably as many as 120 meetings. I'm not perfect. I have a responsibility to go by the rules like everyone else did. Like I said in that email, I have a responsibility to my client to provide what their needs are in their architectural project within the guidelines. And the commission is the judge of how well I've done that. And this project was actually approved by the State Historic Preservation Office. It did not go forward along those lines for various reasons, but I want to say, I guess in closing, that, I commend you for getting involved. I hope you stay involved. I do honestly, truly believe that any conception any idea that commissioners, presenting commissioners have I think there's a reason why. It's because those people are involved. They know the guidelines and they can work within the guidelines. But in terms of something of improprieties and whatnot, it's just not there. I think the research shows that. Again, thanks for your interest and involvement. If we can make this thing better, I'm all for it. I don't think commissioners who are given their time as professionals away from their job, I do not think they should be prohibited for bringing projects before the commission. I think, and I don't have any problems with someone who is giving their time to say, hey, I've given my time to this, and I am experienced and passionate about this and promoting their professional endeavors. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So I'll close with that. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mr. Ferris. Okay, Melissa, David, did you all want to speak up again, or do we have additional people in the community who want to speak before we get to the commissioners?
I just wanted to say, I think I understood the data. What I don't know is if there are 3.6% of the applications were submitted by commissioners, how does that compare to other architects in the city? I mean, that is just not information that's in there. So I don't know. I think it's hard to evaluate. I think it's hard to evaluate those numbers. I know there are a lot of other applications, but I don't know if other groups are putting in 6 and 7 applications a year or not.
And with regard to what Mr. Ferris was saying, we deeply appreciate what he and all of the other commissioners do and have done over the years. And as we said before, we are strong believers in the Historic Commission. That's why, in fact, we purchased our house, which is in a Historic Commission. This is an issue about the perceived feelings that the community has and what we can do to make the Historic Commission stronger. We're not complaining about any one specific project. This is a general comment we're making. So his comments about a project, I'm not sure what project he's referring to. We're talking about the general perception in the community as we walk around our neighborhood, Dilworth, and what people think. And the data that you show, if anything, shows that it would do very little harm or damage to the commissioners to actually recuse themselves from new projects during the years that they're on the commission, since most of the projects don't seem to come from them.
Can I ask just a clarifying question? I'm absolutely willing to look into the data more if there's another data point you're interested in. So we have data points for applications by sitting commissioners. We have a data point for applications by former and sitting commissioners. So would you like me to break out, I want to make sure I'm hearing you right, break out the applications by sitting commissioners to be just from the architects, first of all, and then compare it to out of that 390, what the data is for other architects submitting?
Well, I think Melissa can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what she is saying is for a given architect on the commission, how does that data compare to a given architect not on the commission from another architectural firm? Because for architect to architect, builder to builder, and is the data about equivalent, or do the architects or builders on the commission individually submit more or fewer projects than other architects or builders that are not on the commission?
Right.
Rather than comparing the commission to the city at large, which we don't know what that really means, we're saying if I'm wanting to hire an architect and I go to architect X or architect Y, or architect Y is on the commission, do I have a better chance of the architect Y on the commission having that project approved? The perception is that it is.
Well, I think my question is a little different than that. My question is it typical for one architectural firm in the city to have 6 applications in a year? I don't know. Is that a typical number? Is that a big number for a solo practitioner or a small company? So I don't know how to evaluate that particular aspect. That was my question. So
So you'd like me, sure. So you'd like me to look at this under the lens of what other specific to architects, what other architects have submitted out of the 390 applications and what their data is compared to our architects.
Okay, first of all, I am not trying to make more work for you.
No, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what you're asking for, so I know.
Yeah, what I would have found interesting is to say 200 architects submitted projects last year. Of those, 10 submitted 2 projects or more. 35 submitted 1 project. 40 submitted 6 projects. I mean, I just think that would be an interesting bit of data.
And how it compares to.
It's a lot of work.
I know. That's why I said I'm not sure. I'm not sure I am asking you for that. What I'm saying, what I guess I would like to say is, I'm not asking you for that. But if you're going to tell me that 3.6 is such a small number, that we shouldn't worry about that, which kind of seems like where this conversation is going, I would say 2 things. First of all, if it's that small a number, well, let's go with the perception issue and say, we're going to be totally clear that there's going to be no question about this. If you're sitting on the commission, you don't bring a project. If you're telling me that number's not so small that you feel comfortable doing that, then I guess my question is, I don't know what 3.6% means. Sure, it looks small compared to how many other projects, but I don't know how many other firms are submitting projects. That's all. So I'm not asking you to do more research. I am saying, when you look at those numbers, think about what they really mean. Because I'm not sure, I'm not sure this is useful the way it's presented. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So do we have anyone else from the public before we shoot over to the commissioners who wants to speak to this? All right, Mr. Ferris?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I would just say, I don't disagree. There is an advantage because those people who are former commissioners or sitting commissioners, they are in tune with what the guidelines are and how the commission thinks and votes, and they are familiar with the process. The architects who are not familiar with the process couldn't care less about the process. And in many cases, the commission is perceived as, oh, this is just a neighborhood review board. My architecture is so great and so wonderful, I'll just get through that. Never even crack the book. The ones that are sitting there, that are listening, that are present, have been present at the prior meetings, they have an advantage because they're involved. And there is nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can almost see it when you sit there and watch. You can see if an architect is involved and knowledgeable of the guidelines. Sometimes they have home builders come through that present a set of stock plans or something like that. Those projects are often get denied because they just don't conform to the guidelines. And so the only way I know is to correct the perception. That is, the perception is incorrect. The only way to make it correct is for people to get involved. I wish every resident of Dilworth was sitting at that HDC meeting every month, being involved. But it's very few and far between. People just aren't there. But they don't have, they don't mind complaining about the process of the decisions at the neighborhood get together I mean, the perception is incorrect. Get involved, learn what it's all about, and Then once you've done that, then look to make it better. So that's all I have on that.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. So we want to welcome more voices into the conversation. Any other public speakers? Okay, so none. So let's go to Commissioner Walker.
Thank you. Conflict of interest is an issue with commissions city in our zoning commission. Architects, you have former architects, you have former city. It is constantly an issue, and I respect everyone's concern, even of the appearance of a conflict of interest. But I have to say that 3.6% number really surprised me. And I think maybe I'm missing this, but I think what that means is of the world of applications that were submitted, most being submitted by architects, some by contractors, et cetera, only 3.6% of all of those were by sitting commissioners.
That's correct.
Okay, so I think that number tells us a lot, does speak to the issue about the appearance. And I would actually flaunt that number because I do think that it says to me that there's a surprising small number of sitting architects of sitting commissioners that are working on jobs. But to exclude their ability to earn a living and also serve on the commission, I'm not so sure that that's a fair way to deal with all this. Maybe we can apply an extra level of scrutiny when we review their submittals. But I mean, if you look at commissions throughout the city, there are always going to be conflicts of interest that commission members have to deal with. There might be former, they're in the same career path, and so they're making decisions on other people. So I do feel really pretty good about that number. And I do think, though, if the appearance issue is an issue, perhaps there's a way that we can change the process to some small degree to deal with that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Walker. Commissioner Henningsen?
Yeah, I think John Ferris had hit the nail on the head. And obviously without the data. Yeah, it's on. How about now? Can you guys hear me okay now? Yeah? Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'll get real close to the mic. Just kind of think, and it's hard, without the data points, it's hard to know, but my gut tells me that if you were to compare how many applications come through with an architect that's on the commission or had commission experience versus one that had no experience with the guidelines, I feel strong enough to say that the one that has zero to little experience with the guidelines is going to take them a couple of times to get through. It also depends on how well they listen to the guidance from the HGC staff. But is that really the problem? Is there a problem? Maybe we do need to think on how we can tweak the process. Do we let some of our fellow commissioners, do we spend less time or more time reviewing their applications because they're a previous or current commissioner? I don't know, just throwing out some food for thought there.
It's a challenge, I think, because perception can many times become reality. However, when faced with cold, hard facts, if that perception persists, then we have to ask ourselves what that's about. I would echo the sentiment that's been expressed, which is that this is a transparent organization, a transparent body, and now what's even more, less difficult, it's even easier to get involved because we're streaming online. I had a neighbor come up to me and say that they are submitting an application, and in preparation for that, they sat and watched all of September's meeting. And so we're looking at numbers of commissioners sitting and former who have submitted applications, and we're analyzing that data. I'm quite curious to analyze the data of the people who are putting out the perception that there is this huge conflict of interest and that this is a pay-to-play kind of situation. How many of them have actually participated in the process, observed the process, served on the commission, been a part of the process? Because that makes it really difficult to kind of speak to the concerns of people who don't know what we do. Any other commissioners want to add to it? Commissioner Hayden?
Yes. I'm in the tail end of my second term. I think by the time it's all said and done, I will have been a commissioner for a little over 7 years, because I started out by filling a position that was vacated. In my entire time on the board, in a number of those years, probably I think close to 4, as chairman, I have seen no impropriety, no special privileges or review process granted to any sitting or former board member. In fact, my own personal perception is we beat up the former commissioners way worse than we beat up anybody, some in particular, but that's neither here nor there. I also think that there is a huge misconception about what the guidelines are about and how to use the guidelines. And again, in that now almost 7 years that I've been on the commission, the biggest problem we have with people coming in and being upset with the result of their application is they either hired an architect who had absolutely no familiarity with it whatsoever, or they had the position that I know what I want to do with my house and I really don't care what the Historic District Commission wants. I've kind of added the bells and whistles and the brackets and the fish scales and all that kind of stuff to make the house look historic, but they're really only here to get their certificate of appropriateness. I think there's an awful lot of people who come through this process who would not do it if they didn't have to. Their interest is not in preserving the historic district character. Their interest is in adding value to their house, and that's it. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayden. Commissioner Rumsch?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
So sorry about the phone, it'll stop in a second. So I'm Damon Rumsch. I've been on the commission 16 years. I've served as chair for 2 of those years. I've lived in the historic districts 31 years. I've presented personally 2 projects of my own houses over that period of time. I would like to address the perception issue because, in fact, I do believe that when a commissioner that's sitting on the commission presents to us, we are very careful to review theirs carefully. I do not perceive any partiality toward city commissioners. On the other hand, I do believe as a perception that it cannot be helped that from the outside, if you're on this commission and you're presenting to the commission a project that we wouldn't have some kind of influence over its decision. So I think the perception is valid, and I agree with Jill and with PJ that I think a small change is maybe in order. As Jim said, I believe that we are very careful with other commissioners in terms of their presentations. So my suggestion for perception purposes is maybe what we do is ask that the individual person that's on the commission not present his own projects. There are always other possibilities in the past. an architectural firm that has other people in it could be the presentation or presenter. There's the homeowner, there's the contractor, if it's an architect that's on the commission. So there are some options of other people presenting to the commission, even though one of the commissioners is involved with that project. And I think that may be a consideration to look at. But in terms of what actually goes on, I'm very confident that we do not give special attention to commissioners, either sitting or previous. If anything, we scrutinize those jobs even closer.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsch. Commissioner Heineman.
Hi, this is Jessica Heineman. I appreciate actually all of the input everybody has offered. I think it's great feedback. I would probably just go back to something that Jill said and the state statute, which is, to Jill's point, any board or commission is required by state statute to have active professionals engaged in what they're doing because the expertise is valued, right? And boards and commissions, whether they're city boards and commissions, nonprofits, right? They all have codes of ethics and standards that govern conflicts of interest, right? Because by the nature of the state statute, to bring that expertise of an acting professional on the board, we have to address that, right? So I think it's the same in the law profession. I think it's the same in the medical profession. I think it's the same in the real estate profession. This is thematic, right? It's not specific to this board. And I am proud that this board operates with a great deal of transparency. I wish people would listen in on the meetings or come to the meetings because I'm very proud of the levels of transparency that this board operates under. I don't know how realistic the idea of not allowing sitting commissioners to present is. If that's the change, I'm perfectly fine with it. Change doesn't scare me. I'm a sole proprietor, so that means that I am not eligible to sit on the board if that were the rule. And if that were the rule, that would be fine. I've been sitting on the board for many years, and there's certainly someone else that can take the seat. But as a sole proprietor, who primarily does work in the historic districts, it would be the decision between giving up my profession and serving in a volunteer position. And that's not really, we're going to run into other state statute issues if we start going there, which is, again, if that's the rule, that's fine. But I think it really comes down to the thematic issue of the state statute of having the expertise on boards and commissions, not just this one, but any board or commission, and how that plays into any profession. And I am proud of the transparency under which this commission operates. I wish that people were more engaged and more plugged in to understand. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Heineman. To that point, I think that there are 36 boards, is that correct?
I'm not sure the total. There are double-digit boards and commissions in the city of Charlotte. I'm glad to research that. Mm-hmm. I know they all operate under a code of ethics. You have to be, if you're quasi-judicial, you're sworn in. Every single board member has to return a signed code of ethics statement. I'm not as familiar with the details on that as the city clerk's office is, but I'm glad to do any research into, how other boards and commissions do function under that. And I don't know that we'll arrive to a conclusion today, but I really do want people to throw out, if you have ideas, bring them on. If you have ideas on how to tweak the process, and staff will absolutely, do some deeper look into, the performances and reviews of the other commissions and boards, as well as the city handbook and what's required.
Thank you. So I guess my point in bringing up the sheer number of boards is to say that if we take whatever we do here and apply it to the other boards, it will be very interesting to see how that affects the perception, potentially limits our pool of people who are willing to serve because it is such a major commitment, and how that ripple effect affects us all, because I do think that it's something that if we are saying that the perception of a conflict of interest, which I think is very important to look at, if it now limits the people who can serve on the board, that should be not just isolated to the HDC. It should flow out to all the other boards. And if we did that, how would that look? And for many of the people who are pretty active in the conversations about the perception, would they then be willing to step up and make the kind of commitment that needs to be made so that that perception actually changes? These are just things that I'm thinking about out loud and wanted to share. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, John Ferris.
In the spirit of just thinking out of the box, trying to make things better. I mean, I would just, I've often thought about this, never really expressed it as an idea, but what if every project is, instead of being presented by the applicant and the homeowners and whatnot, what if it's just given a number and then it's just put up on the screen, and this is application number 224, and you know, it's evaluated by the commission based on the guidelines, and there are no personalities, no names associated with it. I don't know. It seems like that would really reduce the amount of discussion and input. But I think having someone who is a city commission, having to have someone else present their project, that seems almost discriminatory to me. So, but on the other hand, if you go across the board and there are no names associated with it, and the drawings stand on their own merit, I mean, I don't know if that works or not legally and from a process standpoint, but it's just a thought.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris.
John, we'll look into that as we will look into everything that's brought forward today. Melissa McGuire has her hand up.
Okay, so we'll call on Ms. McGuire and then we'll go over to Commissioner Hayden. Ms. McGuire, David?
I didn't know if you were moving on to other topics or not. If you were, I just wanted to say thank you. I thought this was a really good discussion. I think some of your ideas are very good, and I appreciate your giving serious attention to this.
And we appreciate you bringing it to the forefront so that hopefully our collective communities feel much better about the job that we're doing as commissioners and professionals.
And as you listen to the discussion, if you know, any of you have kind of a eureka moment after this weekend, email me. You know, this doesn't have to be the end. You know, I am strongly committed, as I hope all of our commissioners know, to making this process the best it can be and continual tweaks and changes that are needed. So seriously, John's idea, Damon's idea, Melissa, if you have an idea, Nichelle, anybody, send it to me if you're not comfortable saying it right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Jim, did you have something? Oh, Jim, I think.
Sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
Jim, Commissioner Hayden.
The one potential difficulty that I see with John's recommendation is our quasi-judicial process. I think the way that process is outlined, the way it's mandated by the law, there's a exchange of information, presentation of sworn facts. Our mission is to have a finding of fact in reality as to what we do when we take our votes and make our decisions. And I think that an applicant has the right and responsibility to make a presentation factual, based on the guidelines of their project. And for us to say that we're going to take that away from them and just going to have them put their project up and we're going to look at it and make a decision, I don't think that's going to qualify for quasi-judicial. So I think we need to make sure that we maintain our legal process, but if there's ways we can do it in such a way to allow, I'm very concerned about taking away some of the people who sit on this board, telling them they can't sit there anymore because they do a few projects now and then they have to come before the board. They are the most prepared, they're the most knowledgeable, they're skilled in every aspect of what it is we're trying to do. To let those people go and tell them they can't be on the board, I think it'd be a very, very big blow to the quality of the board that we have in place and future boards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hayden, for that. We'll end this section on that note, and we'll get prepared to start talking about the design guidelines. I want you all to know, you at home, to know that we've been staring at our lunches sitting over there for a while. So if you'll just give us a minute, let's get prepared to discuss the design guidelines. Okay? Thank you.
Christy, can you hear me?
Hey, Damon, it's Candace, but yes, I can hear you.
Oh, hey, Candace. I sent a short video of some front street garage doors and driveways. And I don't know if you'll get to that discussion today. I'm not sure it'll be appropriate to show it in the meeting when we see the Van Landingham. I'm sorry, I know we can't talk about a specific project.
Yes, we're still streaming through YouTube as well. So just
okay.
just
So
let
my question is, would you have a chance to show that during this thing, or is it something we should do at another time?
I am not sure. I'm not in the same room with Christy, but I can ask her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Damon. Are you there? It's
I am.
Christy. I heard everything you said. Yes, I have the video and it's ready to go.
Oh, good. And I apologize if I'd said something on the air that I shouldn't have.
It's okay. You're okay. We can't talk about specific projects, but I'll remind everyone of that in a minute.
Hey, Christy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we're live streaming. Do you want to stick around for the discussion on the guidelines?
Well, is there, let's see.
We are live. I'm sorry, what?
You have 30 minutes of discussion, 30, 40 minutes?
Yeah, to talk about the guidelines. We're following up from last month, I guess October 23rd, when we talked about commercial and multifamily and residential. Yeah, why don't you stick around and join us? If you can. If you have to go back to work, I do understand.
That's fine. I blocked out till 1 o'clock, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll stick around.
I'm glad
I'll probably remain on mute, but you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. The parking is not working, yeah. Okay. Okay. I think we're back live. Is everyone with us? Technology is not my friend. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we're just gonna pick up from last month. We were talking about commercial and multifamily. I know we've talked about this many times before, but since we're, digging into commercial multifamily, now is also the time to dig into any, existing guidelines with residential. On the screen is the draft outline, again, that we looked at last month. I didn't know if anyone had looked at it in more depth and had any more thoughts they wanted to add, because I know we kind of just quickly ended this on the 23rd. And so I just wanted to give you more of an opportunity to have an open discussion. It's all here. You should all have a copy of it from last month. Damon in particular, the one thing we didn't talk about with context, we talked about having another guideline for context, right? But we didn't get into maybe some of the specifics, especially in relation to parking, locations of garages. And I know Damon wants to talk a little bit about how we can possibly incorporate that into our guidelines. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Damon sent in a great video that he took just driving down the street that was full of garages, parking spots in the front yard. Damon, do you want to tee us up with what we're about to look at with the video? And again, this is not related to a particular project, but more in terms of looking at guideline updates and context. I think Jessica last time suggested we use the Wadsworth Estate in Wesley Heights as maybe a case study site of a place that has a lot of land and might allow for some infill construction if we do need to talk in any form of specificity. Do I recall that right? Yes, okay. Damon, go ahead while I pull up the.
Okay, so I took this while driving, and it's a part of Plaza Midwood that is not in the historic district, so has no controls. This whole development, this whole series of streets has all street-facing garages with paths that go right in front of the garage. And as you watch this video, just notice not only that the garages are facing the street next to the front door, but what you see as you pass by these houses is just parking. So I'm just concerned that this is an example of what we don't want our historic districts to be. And there is absolutely no precedent in any of the historical districts of having anything like this as a streetscape. So just keep that in mind as you watch.
Okay. We're going to try this. For some reason, it came up as Apple Music.
Oh. And I can resend it to you if I need to.
I think I can get it. Okay, can y'all see it?
Can you expand your screen?
No, that's as big as it gets. It's just
the center of the screen?
I believe it was on the, I've tried that. I can't do it. I'm so sorry.
I can send it to the commission.
Damon, can you share it from your computer? If we let you give you control?
Well, give me a second to pull that file up on this computer.
Okay. Okay. Because I think, let me check with Candace. Okay. Damon,
Yeah.
we've made you the presenter, so when you get it up, just go to the top of your screen and hit share.
Okay, I've got to send it to myself again from my phone, so this is going to take a few minutes, but it
Okay.
won't take long.
Let me see if I can figure it out here. Yes, why?
So do you want to continue doing with what something else and then we can come back to that?
Sure, I think what we'll do is just open it up to any commissioners that have any additional thoughts they want to share about current guidelines, commercial, multifamily, things we didn't get to in terms of context, that anything else like similar, like parking, garages. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about?
Sure, we have Commissioner Heineman. Jessica?
Okay.
Hey, I think Chris Mirren was first.
Okay.
Chris
Okay.
Mirren?
Oh, that's no big deal. Thank you. Apologize to everybody. I was a little late, ran into some traffic trying to come home from an errand. But for me, Christy and I have talked about this, but I think we're going to start seeing a lot more new materials, and especially in multifamily. My big concern is EFS. Not that I'm against it, but I believe that as a field, and kind of we see it in the same thing with fiber cement, that there is more wrong ways to install it than right. And I think as we get into these smaller jobs that we're talking about in historic districts versus, you know, a warehouse in the middle of nowhere or shipping something, that we're going to start getting tile installers and all these other people that are going to have a go at it, because on paper it looks real easy, but it's really easy to make it look bad. Case in point, if anybody's close to South Park, look at the Container Store. That's the EFS product, and it's not even 9 years old, and it is not aging well. I don't know if I have a good answer for it. Unfortunately, certain EFS installers have their manufacturers have their installers that they certify and programs with that, but there's still ways to get around that. And we've seen Photoshop documents and other things that, you know, I think it's more work than it needs to be. But I think it's something that's going to come fast and furious at us with multifamily, because as the building review look at how a building envelope is in multifamily, it's less forgiving than residential. You know, in residential, if you don't do something on your walls, you can make up for it in the roof, because how res check works. But when you get into a com check, which is the commercial division of it, it's really it needs a continuous insulation piece, which a lot of people are finding with like a 2-inch poly, just basically glorified styrofoam that you get with EFS. And so a lot of people do that because they know that there's not an added step. It's more of a congruent wall section. And not saying that all EFS is bad, but it's easier to do it wrong than right. So I think that's something that we need to just kind of either look a little bit more to, or try to, and I can do my research too. I'll be honest that as far as trying to find a good installer for it, we work in too many markets. So we just see a lot of crap, or a lot of stuff that starts to fail sooner than it should.
No,
Thank
I think
you.
that's really great feedback. And I think that's partially why it took the commission so long to get on board with Hardie, right? It took Hardie, or I should say fiber cement, because it took a lot of time for other companies to kind of come along and create that thicker product that looks more like a traditional product. So in terms of materials, if EFS can't be made to appear like a traditional product, maybe that's the lens we look at it through. Or maybe if it's, maybe what it is talking about, we're also allowing, new construction being contemporary infill with maybe different products that fits the district. So if you do have these strong concerns, maybe at this point, we specifically outline products that we just won't accept.
Yeah, and that might be the way to do it, because unfortunately too, just like our fiber cement, we're also talking with science. Like now, Hardy accepts or won't accept their warranty on a wall system unless it's on Z-clips, or it's the materials actually brought off against or off of the wall for commercial applications. And EIFS is finally starting to get the hang of it, where it's a drainable backing, which is really important in the respect that all walls to a certain extent are going to fail. And it's just making sure that your weather barrier, or that paper that you're putting on top of your sheathing, or if it's a like a wet set, or like looks like a paint that you guys see out and about, that stuff is the last defense. So if water gets past that first thing at EIFS and it can drain down, then it's less likely to get mold, because that's where a lot of failures and pockets kind of are created behind EIFS, because it's a plastic cover you're basically painting on. Just think of like a very thick paint. So if there's an air bubble, or if there's a gap where water can kind of sit and expand, or whether through heat and evaporation or through frost, it's going to wreck it real quick with the freeze thaw cycles we see here.
Thanks, Chris. All right, Jessica Heinman.
Chris, thanks for that. I think that was extremely informative. I'm really grateful to have you here for this discussion, because you have a lot of expertise that I think nobody else on this commission has in this regard. So thank you. I was going to echo something that Chris actually is much more knowledgeable about than me, but just that we're building science, like we have to have a partnership with the evolution of building science in what we're doing, but in a way that acknowledges that part of the mission statement in terms of preserving the characteristics of these neighborhoods is the timeless quality and sustainable quality about the built environment, right? So it's a slow home versus a disposable home, or it's a commercial building that really is going to stand the test of time versus a disposable commercial building, right? And I think that's going to be hard to bump up against, is understanding the building science pushes on the commercial side, and also I don't know that we have a great grasp of the code requirements on the commercial side and how that's going to play into what we do. Like my expertise is all in residential, and so when I fall on rhythm and fenestration and proportion, it becomes something that is not quite as relevant in a commercial setting, where it's driven by the percentages of openings based on the fire marshal's things I don't know about the code, right? And I would love to get a primer, maybe a mini retreat training session in how that might come into play, or how that's connected with what we do, because I feel really nervous about bumping up against that and either not having enough understanding or being in conflict instead of partnership with those forces, right? Because I think that is part of what creates the perception of antagonism with the applicants, is us being in conflict with the other forces that are in play. So to the extent that we can have a better understanding and a better partnership with what the applicants are trying to accomplish, that I think helps with this perception issue that we talk about. And then just to flip to my other comment is, I had mentioned it at the very end of our last meeting, Christy, but it feels so important to me that we be able to lean upon some of the theories of Kevin Lynch's image of the city as it relates to commercial and multifamily and institutional built environment. I think that those, timeless theories about edges and thresholds and paths and nodes are so critical in how a totally different scale of built environment overlays with these residential communities. And right now, trying to apply our guidelines, I think can appear subjective, because we don't have that timeless theory in the guidelines to reference, whether we're doing it or not. I think we had an application many years ago where we referenced it, and the architect who was presenting was like, well, yeah, I know what that is, but it's not in the guidelines, so I don't have to do it. Right? We were talking about gateway on a larger project at the time, the concept of the gateway to, the entry or gateway to a historic district. And so, sorry, I won't go on forever, but that feels so critical to me to have those theories in the guidelines to understand the different built environment scales and how they're interconnected.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, Jill.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wonder if there might be some benefit to adding more specificity to the additions section of the guidelines. I know that deal with those things all the time, the impact of those on the streetscape. And while our guidelines do say certain things that are helpful, it's a lot of like back. I noticed in the additions section, there's a statement that said additions should follow guidelines for new construction. And then if you go to new construction guidelines, it speaks to the specific issue of space to follow historic precedent, immediate surroundings, adjacent across the street. And while that's all stated in the guidelines, I think perhaps we might want to give specificity in terms of how many feet an addition can protrude, or that it not be any more than a certain percentage of a house's width, or something, so that with that more clearly, more transparent.
Okay. Thanks, Jill. Chris Mearn.
Jessica said with some of the stuff, I think that Kevin Lynch stuff's like on point. And I think I haven't had a chance to get fully into the document, but the 2040 vision plan for Charlotte and I think therefore the UDO is really going to start speaking about this and bring up these concepts to the forefront of what design is in the city. And knowing that, the 2040 vision plan's not looking at the density and the build out that we have in our districts, but thinking primarily of what Plaza Midwood is and how it's right on the edge of the district and then within Dilworth. I think trying to get these terms across the board into our HDC stuff is going to be really valuable. And especially, I think that's awesome to bring up Kevin Lynch. And I teach history for the urban design beginners at UNCC, and not enough people know about that. So the fact that that's coming up in here is very exciting to me.
Yeah. Damon, are you ready?
In order to share, do I need to push share and then it'll take me to the video?
Yes. So what you do is you hit share your screen, and then there we go. We got it.
All right, here we go. So,
Okay.
So as you're watching this, just notice the parking. Notice the fact that what you see on the houses is the garage doors and not really the structure. Anyway, that's what I wanted to show by this video. And this is in Plaza Midwood, but it's not in the historic district park. I can play it. I can run it again if you like. Oh,
Yes.
but here's one more time and then I'll cut it off.
Okay.
That's impressive.
Cars and trees and driveways. I don't know.
Anyway.
What street is that?
I don't even remember the name of the street, but there are like 3 or 4 streets back. Let's see, to the east of Plaza Midwood. So as you go out of the neighborhood going toward Eastway Drive, that direction, it's on that side of Plaza Midwood. And it's all new construction, but it's just a string of those. And anyway, I thought it was a good example that we don't want.
Thanks for sharing that, Damon.
That's good. So how should we, phrase this in our guidelines specifically?
Well, I think there's been so there's been one or two situations where the commission has allowed for garage doors facing the street on a side yard. But as a consistent item, I think it should be very discouraged and only allowed garages facing the street in very specific situations. So that at least it's stated in our guidelines that if you're doing a multifamily, that we're expecting you to have doors facing the street, not garages.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're saying that we should fine tune what 8.2 numbers 5 and 6 currently say. One is for new construction. It says for new construction, provide driveways to the side of the new building. New driveways should be as narrow as possible. And then number 6, do not place paved areas for parking in the front yard. All driveways because, the garage, the parking is leading to the garage. And so it ends with all driveways for residential uses should extend to at least the rear building line.
Well, and especially when you get into townhomes, the model is front door, garage, and then the living space above. And I think Damon's absolutely right with multifamily, and that just doesn't fit the context of our neighborhoods to have. I don't know, no front loaded garages allowed on multifamily projects. How does the commission feel about a guideline like that?
Well, and I think it will deter people presenting those. Because otherwise we've got to go through the reasons why not to do it in our commission. And that's just so flying in the face. Cars were just not in the development of these neighborhoods. They just weren't the main thing. And therefore garages were sent to the back or, usually even separate, not even attached.
Yeah. So that gets to another point, Damon, is that we will from time to time have applications for attached garages, but we don't really have anything specific in our guidelines saying no to that. Thoughts?
Well, and I don't think we should say no to attached garages because if it's around back, it may not be an impact.
Right.
Or if you are indeed getting cars off the yard, that may be a good situation. But I think it's a rare situation that may be acknowledged, but generally discouraged.
Okay.
Specifically about garage doors, what I think.
Okay.
Thanks, Damon. Jessica?
Okay, I have a couple of notes. I'm going to hop all over the place. I want to hop really quick back to something that Jill said. And Christy, I might need you to just fill in some blanks for me on this because I feel like I've asked this before, but I don't remember what the answer was. I have never understood why additions is a separate chapter. Why is it not a subset of the design of the construction chapter? Why is it a separate chapter? Because it feels like when you actually look at the document and new construction is 16 guidelines and additions is a few pages. All of the guidelines apply to all of the projects, and it feels to me like it should not be a separate chapter. It should be housed in the same chapter. And I think that gets to a little bit of what Jill was saying too.
Yeah. So I think it's because yeah. So in my experience, across the board, additions are looked at a little differently than new construction. because most times when people are saying new construction, they're meaning infill, right? Like brand new buildings, and how you treat a brand new building and is different than how you would sometimes treat an addition to a historic building. And that's the only answer I have for you. Cindy, do you have any thoughts about that? We do. Yeah, Cindy mentioned referencing back, and I think it's, I mean, I am glad to talk to the consultants about that, but usually additions, the focus is like not overpowering the building, not making sure you can tell where the original building is and the new building begins. Whereas new construction is about new construction. I mean, there are some related parts, but with additions, you want to relate the design of the addition back to the original house. And with new construction, that design is, you know, dictated by whatever design the architect has chosen or the homeowners have chosen.
Well, I 100% agree with you, but in practice, right, the overwhelming majority of what we're reviewing is additions to historic homes. And when I'm sitting at the table there with my guidelines, I'm flipping my book open to 6.1, whatever the page is with the list of the guidelines on it, 6.16, 6.12.
Yes, exactly, 6.16.
Okay, I automatically flip to that page and I leave that open on my desk and I just reference the rest on an as needed basis. And I evaluate every project based on that list of all of the guidelines. But that's the new construction section. It's not the addition section. It just feels to me like the addition section needs to be in the new construction guidelines, because additions are not standalone new construction, but they are new construction.
Right.
They're a different type of new construction, right? They're not a, anyway, that's, sorry, I know we don't have a ton of time. I want to jump onto a couple of other things. Maybe we could put something in our guidelines for multifamily when we get back to this garage issue and front-facing garages and front yard parking and the length of driveways that encourages I think the issue is that there's maybe an established pro forma for the density and specifications and resale standards that are expected for these types of projects. And it's our responsibility to give a little bit more guidance on those pro formas, right, before projects get to us. And so I think if we could give the type of direction that would reference historic patterns of establishing alleys or the concept of carriage houses, I mean, I think there's a lot of precedent that we could lean on to give more guidance to how these projects can be written from a pro forma standard before they even get into the architecture. That may help us a lot with this issue of the front-facing garages. The two I have written down are perhaps we could establish new alleys, quote unquote, and perhaps we could look at carriage house precedent. Do you guys remember that project in Dilworth behind Copper that was the landlocked lot in the middle? That was such a beautiful carriage house. They never got built, but it was a project that was so sensitive to the historic context.
The second one that came through you're talking about, right? Because the first one was for townhomes, and that didn't get built.
Oh, I don't think I was there. I don't think I was here for that one. That would have been before me. Yeah, okay.
There were two separate projects there. One was for apartment, townhome, multifamily living. And the second one is where all the property owners on Kingston got together because none of them had carriage houses. And they all kind of got together wanting to build a joint carriage house on this lot that adjoined their land.
Yeah, that's the one I'm referring to. I thought it was so clever because the carriage house was a landlocked piece of property that couldn't really be used for anything else, right? And it was accessible by alley, and that entire block of neighbors did not have driveways or parking. And that entire block you can't park on. It's insane. And so it was just such a clever solution to the problem to lean back on the precedent of a carriage house. And I wonder if we could reference that somehow in these guidelines, because it may be a great opportunity for these projects that really do require a certain level of parking for resale or whatever. I mean, we're also going to run into the TOD parking requirements in some of these neighborhoods, which is less than 1 spot per unit, right?
Right, and that's the one benefit that TOD does offer to us is that reduced parking standard, and that actually helps us in our reviews of any new multifamily and commercial.
It helps us to the extent that we at least have something to fall back on when the neighborhood call and complain about the parking.
Right.
Let me just interject that we're almost at 1 o'clock. And so we have 2 more people who want to speak. And I know that you all probably have some more ideas. And Christy, maybe we can discuss adding that to another retreat or, but so Jessica, were you through with your thoughts? Did you get through your list? Okay, perfect. So PJ, you're up.
Real quick, 2 comments, adding on to what Jessica was saying about combining new construction and additions. I know we had talked about this when the new guidelines had come out. And I think one of the considerations was with additions, you could be a porch, it could be an addition. But when you think about it, what is the difference between an addition and new construction? It's context. New construction is context to its surroundings. And an addition is context to the parts and pieces of that existing structure, right? So with thinking about that, maybe there is some way where we can combine those 2 because it does kind of make sense. There's synergies. Just a comment.
PJ, I think that was really excellently said.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm done.
Just, that's great. New construction to its surroundings, you're right. Because that's the first, and then we get into the details of the parts of the house to itself, but first it needs to fit in its surroundings.
Absolutely.
And you're absolutely right that additions have to match the parts and pieces of that particular house.
So I think context is that thing that joins them both together, but also differentiates them. Comment number 2, front loading garages. At what point in history does a front loading garage become normal? Is that 80s? Is it 90s? I don't think we're there. Are we there yet?
70s.
Okay. So again,
It depends.
60s, 70s even?
So it comes around and it's attached to the side of houses with the ranch
Carports.
house,
Yeah.
with a carport, and then it eventually transitions into being garages. But that's, the difference is that is equal to the plane of the front of the house.
Yep.
And even in the 1980s, I grew up in a 2-story 1980s, it was equal to the front of the house.
Yeah.
But now you're getting those that they're set in front of the front of the house. And
Yeah.
so you get the garage first and the entrance is
I don't
way
like
back. We've taken it full circle from the priority on the people and the street and moving the priority to the automobile in the
Yeah.
front.
So at some point, and I'm all for, because it's not, if I look back 50 years, those types of garages didn't exist, so it's not a problem.
Right.
So let's try to add what we can now, but knowing at some point as we're planning for the future, we're going to need to start tweaking things.
Well, and you're right. It
Not
all
a
goes back
problem
to
now.
context, right? Because Oakland Park is totally different with where their parking is located than Dilworth or Wesley Heights or Pleasant Midwood or Hermitage Court.
We're back to context.
Full circle.
I'm gonna go back on mute. Thank you.
All right, thanks,
Okay.
PJ. Krista?
I was just going to say exactly what Christy just brought up. Definitely, I feel like we should define the front garage because I'm definitely seeing that all over town. And that's just where we're headed, sadly, in my opinion. But it was proposed on a project across from me that was going for rezoning, and we did not. I'm not in a historic district, so we did not have the protection and a board like this to back up our argument that was just totally wrong for our neighborhood. But I was out in the university area yesterday and I could have shot that footage, Damon. I mean, it was just all over. And then it's right behind the Harris Teeter in Myers Park. That's a perfect example of an infill with front loading garages. But I think that it definitely needs to be defined because we are going to face this issue with Oaklawn Park Just what Christy said, that was my point that I was going to say too, is that I think that that's definitely why it needs to be defined because it already exists in that area.
Thanks for that, Krista. And let's end it with Jill.
You want to do that, but we'll go with it. Christy, you might know the answer to this. I was just thinking about that Todd, where we're talking about having to deal with number of cars with multifamily and the Todd restrictions. In a historic district overlay, will the Todd still apply in terms of parking, number of cars, number of parking spaces rather?
That's a great question. Todd is no different than any other zoning, like R5, R8, the pet overlay. And how overlays are applied in the city of Charlotte is the most restrictive applies. So historic districts is probably always going to be the application of everything. And if we have stronger restrictions for certain areas, whether it be height or setback or driveway location, historic districts will prevail. We can't say, no, you can't park on your site, because that's an allowable use of the property and that gets into use, but we can always determine how that looks.
But my question was, can we rely on the Todd to restrict the number of parking spaces?
Yeah.
Or because it's historic district overlay? No.
Yeah, because we don't really get to parking spaces in our ordinance. So
Right.
we would rely on whatever the underlying zoning says about parking. Yes, you're right. Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's it for today. If you all have additional points or questions that you want to pose, please email them to Christy so that we can pick up where we've left off today. And don't forget that our November meeting is 1 week later due to a holiday. Anything else you want to add, Christy, before we adjourn?
No, just to thank everyone. I know we've had 2 separate retreats and they're not as easy over video call. But I just really appreciate everyone's dedication and support. It means a lot.
Thanks for your service, guys. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Quick question. What is the date for our meeting in November?
November 18th.
Thank you.
Yes, and the agenda goes live today.
Perfect.